Old Testament. God's mercies, everlasting to everlasting. And the 26th chapter and the 18th to the 25th verse. Genesis 26 and 18. And Isaac was digging again the wells of water, which they had dug in the days of Abraham, his father. For the Philistines had stopped them all, stopped them after the death of Abraham. And he called their names after the name by which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well of springing water. And the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying that the water is ours, and he called the name of the well Escol, because they strove with him. We'll stop right there. The subject today is the search for wells of water. Oh, Heavenly Father, we thank you for your loving kindness and your tender mercy. Thank you for your outstretched hand. We praise and we magnify. We give you all the glory and all the honor. We give you all the praise. Speak through the lips of Clan, mere man and woman. Thou have the words of eternal life. We give you all the glory and all the honor. Save the unsaved. Bring back the backslider. We thank you for what you've already done, Lord. Open up the wisdom of my mind. Satisfy the soul and strengthen the saints today. For Christ's sake, we pray. Amen and amen. In the book of Genesis, we see a drought had come in the land, and at this time Abraham had an agreement with Abimelech. And Abimelech, they believe an agreement is an agreement unto life. So whenever Abraham would dig a well to feed and his crops and to nourish his people and feed his animals, and water and reservoir was there, it was his. Whatever he had dug it became up. But like everything else, Abraham died. And it wasn't too much about it that they stopped all the wells and plugged them up, and Abimelech sent out the Philistines and they shut down all the wells and everything else. And Abraham had died and left off the scene, and he left Isaac, the heir of promise, there. And he had to go back and start all over. And it wouldn't have been fine if they were doing fine, but then a drought came in the land. We understand when a drought comes, that means there's no water. Rivers start drying up. It get real dry. And, you know, we always like to go out there and look at, you know, people talk about Death Valley should have been water there. But now we don't know what happened in the earth that the world turned that way, but I always say it probably did, because it was probably after the flood. And then God invaded the waters and told them to come back and left the dry land. Yes. No, but they don't want to admit that. They just say it was a residence of water there at one time. I'm saying water was all over the earth when God let it rain in Noah's day. And so these things, water, all of a sudden the drought came in the land. And like anything else, we understand, even in wilderness and camping, you go out there, you can't drink from every stream, because some of that water ain't pure. Amen. And it has to be purified. And that's the biggest thing they have in certain these war-torn countries, like Liberia and all these other, in certain parts of Ethiopia, is how to get clean water to drink. And that's a necessity, because, you know, you get diphtheria and boy, my goodness, and all these other diseases, and on top of that you get parasites in certain waters that stagnated. And Isaac knew that water is a necessity, so we're searching for water. And I always say in our country, you know, we live to certain things, and I thought about how in Puerto Rico, all of a sudden now, Abbott gonna decide to give $100 million to the Habitat for Humanity and come out to help build up some of these houses that have been torn down. I said, yeah, I said they want to get some of these workers back for cheap money. They'll build them a house. I said they should have did that a long time ago. Should build up a bunch of houses their own self. And I said, but the problem is they would have moved their manufacturing from the state side to there because they had cheaper labor.
Yes, yes.
But the problem is they can't get the same results out of the medicine that they get from Lake Michigan.
Right, right.
And that's the only reason that it's still here.
Yes.
And so some of these things, you know, some of them things is for their own benefit. But whatever benefit of drug they making there in Puerto Rico, they want to keep making it. And that's what I said, that's the only reason why they would help. They want to keep the workers, because if everybody get off that island, they'll be by themselves. There won't be nobody to work that factory. Won't be nobody to labor in their chemistry and nothing like that. People will be off that island, going somewhere else. And we see that some of that is happening because people that got up and got off that island. I worked with a fella early in the morning. He said the best thing he did was him and his mama decided to get on that boat and get out of here. He said we started in Miami, ended up in Chicago. He said we didn't care, but he said it was just terrible. He says, you know, the necessity of things is just unbearable when you don't have clean water to drink. And I understand that. And here's the same thing happened to Isaac. And spiritually, so water in the Bible means so many things. You know, they talk about, we read about when the Israelites got out and was searched for water, and Moses had to strike a rock. And water flowed from the rock. And you know, and the water took care of the thirst of over 3 million people. Animals, livestock, children, and everything. But Isaac knew it was a famine, and Isaac, the son of Abraham, knew that it was something. And we got to remember what Isaac's name means laughter. But I don't think he was laughing now, because it's seriously a dry, parching part of the land. And also spiritually, when folks, we always say somebody's water done dried up, mean their soul done dried up.
Yes.
In other words, they was full of laughter, they was full of joy. The water done dried up. And I thought about the generations we live in now, where people can't take rejections. Their spirit dry up on them. The thirst of their joy of life is gone. And they don't want nobody to live if they ain't living. So we live in a time when folks are just they're dried up with joy, dried up with the thirst of living water. So in this it says his father had died and had left him, and Isaac needed to take care of his family. So it said in the 18th and 17th verse, it said, Isaac departed thence and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelled there. And the 18th verse talks about, and Isaac dug again the wells of water, which they had dug in the day of Abraham his father, for the Philistine had stopped them after the death of Abraham. So the covenant, when they make a covenant back then, after the death of Abraham, the Philistines feel that our duty is over. And he called their name also after the name in which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants dug the well and found them at a well of springing water. Oh, this is good. Now, you done dug a well, and you didn't have to reach down and get it. You done dug down, and the water is springing up. Now, hey, that's a good well, ain't it?
Yeah.
You ain't got to get a pump. You ain't got to get no bucket. It's something you done dug down, and the water is coming up out the ground. Springing water. Oh, this is it. And the herdsmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, the water is ours. Ain't that just how the world is?
Yep.